in the chat along with your speaker positions. That would help a lot. And shortly after, around like 12:11, 12:17, we can start the debate. Okay, great. Everyone wrote their names in the chat along with their speaker positions. Without further ado, to begin this debate, Prime Minister, here. I won't be timing you guys like on stream. I'll just be doing it by myself. I encourage you guys to time yourselves as well. And if you speak anything past 7 minutes, 15 seconds, I'll just stop writing. So you're encouraged to stop that. Again, without further ado, Prime Minister, here.
Am I audible? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yeah, you're audible.
Oh, okay, I'll be taking my POIs for me. I think that you, as a voter, when you actually go to these elections and actually cast your vote, when you actually vote in consideration of one single issue, and you're not looking at the other policies or the other issues that these parties are actually catering to, we think that's exactly where you're not actually making any progress in your country. And we think that's exactly what the harms and the backlashes of this single issue voting actually happens. Now, the Prime Minister on side of opening government, and I'll be doing a few things in my speech. First of all, I'll be giving a clear setup and tell you exactly what the debate wants and what the debate should be about. And second of all, I'll be giving one main argument under the key phrase of why the normalization of single issue voting is harmful and bad, which gives a lot of impacts to our government as well as our citizens. Now, first of all, let's take a look at status quo. We see that in status quo right now, we see that many voters are practicing and opting into single issue voting, and we see that has its own harms and backlashes to the own government and their citizens. And now we say that instead of single issue voting, it should be on the whole party as a whole, looking at all the issues that this party is actually catering to, seeing the policies that this party offers as a whole, and actually weighs the pros and cons of this policy and not just one single issue that caters to them. Now, a few questions that I think need to be answered in this debate for us to actually have a fruitful debate is number one, why the normalization and practice of single issue voting will be harmful and bad. And number two, what this issue actually looks like in real life. And number three, why it is harmful. Now, on our side, what we want the opposition side is exactly how you think single issue voting will give a good impact and how do you actually aim to progress when we say that it will create society that is selfish and how we say that it won't give any proper impact to your country. Now, before I move on to my main argument, a few characterizations and a few illustrations as to what this debate actually looks like in society right now. First of all, when we look at single issue voting, what we mean by this is that the voter only votes on an issue which caters to them. Meaning to say is that if I'm a voter that would like for abortion to be passed, and then I would vote for a party that would let that law pass. At the same time, that there is a possibility that that party doesn't cater to other issues, such as possibly this party could also be a party that would let child marriage be something that is passed. And we don't think that's something that would cater to all citizens. We think that voter would only look at one single issue and not all the other issues. We say they're not voting and they're not looking and voting the party as a whole. We say that this also means that voter is prioritizing themselves, their own needs, and something that caters to them. And we say caters to them. Now, second of all, something that I would like to bring up in this, not now, something I would like to bring up is I think it's extremely important for us to actually look at what voting looks like, the impacts of election. We see that when you're actually electing the government, someone who will be in office for 5 years, we see this extremely important for us to actually be careful and for us to actually be careful who we're actually electing of government, because we see that this government is also the people who will be making tons of decisions and policies, such as making decisions for the betterment of our economy, our welfare, our education, our healthcare, and so much more. We see that it is extremely important that we pick the correct government that can actually cater to all our citizens and not just half of them. Now, moving on to the most vulnerable stakeholder that I think is important in this debate is our citizens. Now, we see that there is a comparison whether you do practice where you do practice single voting or not. We see that when you do actually practice single voting, we see that this gives a heavy impact on our citizens, where you actually create selfish citizens who are not mindful to the other people, because like I've characterized, they would only vote of an issue that caters to them. But if you do actually practice single voting, we see that other citizens who this policy would not cater to would be unhappy and satisfied, since you're only catering to half of your citizens. Now, to my one main argument on why we think that the normalization of single issue voting will be bad and will be harmful. Now, there are three analyzations under this argument. Number one, we say that the normalization of it will overshadow other needs of our other citizens. Now, like I've illustrated before, the fact that probably this one party would cater to half of the citizens but not cater to other people. We say that in this moment you're not catering to all our citizens. And number two, under this analyzation, is that you're not caring and catering to other people. Now, we say that it also creates a society where you're not caring and catering to other people, because we say that the impacts of other policies that this government is also bringing to the minorities or the other oppressed groups or the victims of this issue or the people who are impacted by this policy, we say that you're not creating a society or a government that's actually catering or caring to these other people. And lastly, we say that there is an impact on our citizens as well. We say that even if the government doesn't get elected, even if the government that doesn't cater to all their citizens doesn't get elected in the first place, we say that this creates a mindset to your citizens that, oh, I'm voting for the party that caters to just me, to caters just my issues, to caters just my needs and not the other people around me. We say that this creates a society that's extremely selfish and not mindful. And we don't think that's something that's okay to do, because we say that at the end of the day, your job as the government is to actually cater to your citizens and make sure that your citizens are like very aware and educated voters. And that's why we say that the normalization gives impacts on both the government and as well as your citizens. Well, you see your citizens will get a very bad mindset as well, to say they're not mindful and selfish. Now, the trade-off under this argument is we see that even if on opposition side, you would like to bring up the freedom of choice by saying that, oh, these people should vote based on their own needs since they are citizens of the country. You're pushing on the fact that there is freedom of choice. But we say on our side, even if we don't have that, we say that the impacts and harms of letting these people vote on single issues, we say that all those harms and all those backlashes that you have on both your government and citizens overtakes the freedom of choice that we have on our governments. Because just as I characterized to you, the people that we vote in office in government is extremely important, because they are the people who will be in office for 5 years. Now, panel, what have I done in my speech? I've shown you exactly what this debate looks like. I've shown you exactly the importance of it. I've shown you the importance why we don't want single issue voting to actually be on the rise. And thus, I've told you exactly why OG gives most value to this debate. And that's why I tell you that OG wins this debate. Thank you.
Thank you to that speaker for that fine speech. To begin the opposition bench, leader of opposition, here.
Hold on. 10 seconds. Okay. Let me set my timer. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2. I think it's unfair for OG to come here and give their whole case really contingent upon the fact that all of this will result in a society that is selfish. Why do we think that a selfish society is justified at the end of the day? Because we think that we allow selfish decisions all the time, actually, because we think that it is justified to the point that these people faces a major oppressive issue. They cannot even abort their unwanted child. They're as minorities are facing hate crimes from the police. We think that these certain issues is justified for them to make a selfish decision, just considering themselves without other people because they're that type of oppressed. But then secondly, then I will move on straight to my case because I think SSP's case was quite shallow. But then let's first give my first argument, right? My first argument, how it give a more concentration, more accountability to these candidates to make the right choices, to give the right campaign, right? But then we see that these candidates will be more aware when they make their own policies. This looks like these candidates have to be consistent on these certain issues because they want these people to vote for them. So they have to be consistent in these issues and try to not put their focus on somewhere else. Definitely campaign on just that issue and that issue only. We think that this will avoid these types of politicians trying to cater to everyone at once because they want to focus on this certain particular community, right? And we tell you the benefit of this is that these politicians are likely to actually do their policy because that's the only thing they stand for. If they try to cater to a lot of communities at once, they will tend to not do it because it's unrealistic and inconsistent. And we think that there's more accountability for these politicians to do this policy because secondly, when they don't do this policy, they will get the backlash. Because when they're so consistent about that certain issue and they don't do when they were elected, they will get a lot of backlash, and at the end of the day, the policy will still be done, which this doesn't happen on government. These policies that all of the government imposes doesn't really happen at the end of the day. But then second argument then, the empowerment of voters themselves. We tell you that your side, if you want to consider all the issues at hand in voting, you don't empower the voter because as a student, the education system is lacking. You cannot even vote a single party that wants to advertise on education. You cannot even do that. You have to consider the economical state of the country. You have to consider the working people. These certain things, it doesn't empower the voters. We think that these voters are especially vulnerable because at the end of the day, they want a country that depicts their own opinion. But then secondly, right, we tell you how this is exclusive on our side because it kind of depicts the most prevalent problem in the country. Because the voting at the end of the day, has a lot of community that has different opinions, right? And we tell you these certain communities will show you from the voting results that which problem has to be solved and the problem that is most prevalent that needs to be solved and is urgent. And we tell you this is because there's a clearer stance in politics. And in the long run, we tell you that even though the candidates has some bad sides to them, we tell you at the end of the day, this prevalent problem will be solved. Third argument then on participation and also the principle of democracy. We tell you that this participation is really, really important because why? Let's look at government side. When you have to consider all issues at once, as a student, you have to consider the working class issue, and as someone in poverty, you have to consider the rich people's perspective. We tell you that this is very, very complicated. Politics is deemed as complicated by the citizens. They're most likely to not even come to the election because they're not single issue voters. We tell you that this is harmful because it's not inclusive, right? When you think about politics, you want to think it's something that include everyone, every single community, every single person in the community. But on government, right, it's not really inclusive. Instead, it becomes something that is complicated because you have to consider all of these issues, right? But on opposition, right, we tell you that it is exclusive because even those who don't understand politics that much can still participate because these candidates are being clearer in their stance in what they actually want in their campaigns, right? But then they want their issue to be recognized and change will happen more on our side. But then fourth argument then, we talk about empowerment of specifically marginalized community. Why do we see this? It's because
politicians, usually, if they want more votes, they target certain communities that are facing the biggest problem in the country. We tell you that this doesn't happen in government because the government will just focus on the majority, right? Because on government side, it will just focus on the majority. But then on our side, if we tell you that this marginalized community is most likely to be the single issue voter in the first place because they're extremely oppressed. They want change immediately. So they're most likely to be, oh, if this person solves my problem, I'm going to vote for you. So this gives more empowerment, more awareness towards the problem that is happening towards this marginalized community, right? But it's second elaboration, and we tell you that this single issue makes minorities vote for the candidates that wants to help them. And at the end of the day, they will not be the people on the ground. They will also be noticed. Their problem will be more aware towards the whole political scenery. Why is this so important? Because we tell you in certain places like United States, this marginalized community is completely excluded from society because the voting system have been catering towards the majority. But understand that we change this by being a single issue voter. When we talk about the normal citizens of the United States, right? They don't usually become a single issue voter because they don't even think voting is that important in the first place because they don't face that much of a problem and they think that their life is already okay. But we tell you when this marginalized community that is extremely oppressive become a single issue voter, it increases incentives for these politicians to make votings. Yes, Alexa, yeah.
So are you saying that if people are not single issue voters, then they will simply just not vote at all?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that single issue voters is most likely to be the marginalized community because understand that they're facing a lot of oppressions for people. They're being killed by policies because of police brutality and hate crimes. The women's rights are being taken away. And we tell you that these certain things are very, very harmful and they're most likely to want to make change for themselves and their family without considering other people's opinions. And understand that even though they don't consider other people's opinions, it is justified because at the end of the day, your vote should depend on your opinion, not your vote should depend on the problem that you face the most. And understand that the info site already says the problem that they're facing is already big enough. But then lastly to you, we talked to you about equality. When the voice of these minorities are heard, and everyone and the political party is starting to want to cater towards them, we tell you that we achieve equality better on our side. So if you want a side that actually prioritizes the minorities and at the same time have a government that depicts the voice of the citizens, then vote for side opening opposition. Okay, here.
Thank you to that speaker for that speech. To continue, OG, Deputy Leader, or rather Deputy Prime Minister, here.
I find it funny that side of opposition wants to claim that on their side, they want equality to exist. They bring up the fact that, oh, on their side, they want to have this sense of equality in which every single person can cast a vote based on what they want. But we tell you that firstly, right, in the context of you literally choosing a government that governs a whole country, that their decisions are going to impact the whole millions of people living in that one certain country, it is extremely selfish for you to come up here and say that you want equality when all that you are prioritizing is the needs of yourself and not actually considering what happens to the other people whose policies are affected by this one certain government that you are voting for. So what have side of opposition bring up in today's debate? Firstly, right, they come up here and they tell you that a selfish society is justified in this debate because, like, oh, it's fine that these people want to vote for something that they feel like is so like these like people who are like marginalized can vote based on like the simple fact that they think that they deserve to have this vote to vote on who can actually cater best to them. But we ask you, right, is freedom of choice in this context actually, like, yes, we agree that freedom of choice is important, but let's ask at what cost can freedom of choice in this debate be protected? We tell you that your freedom of choice in this context is directly harming other people, right? You are basically saying to society, right? You're basically saying to all of these voters that can like go out and actually pick the government that governs their country is that, oh, it is fine that you want to simply choose a government that only caters to yourself, even at the harms of marginalizing other communities. They keep on bringing the fact that, like, oh, these people who are voting for these governments who are usually people who feel like they are marginalized. But let's think about the fact that what about the fact of the other people who are who are getting the harms of this one vote, right? What about the people who are getting the harms of like the fact that this government is in charge and not catering to them? What happens when you as a voter, you prioritize the fact that you want an abortion, but at the same time you let this government go on and make like abortion a legal policy, but then they at the same time they ban hijab for women, right? They ban the right for like women to not get into to not be forced into child marriage. We tell you that simple stance alone, right? More people are actually going to be oppressed on your side because of the mere fact that you say that it is okay for you to do just that, right? Yes.
Is it possible for the majority to be oppressed?
Yes. No. Okay. We tell you that in this sense of you are simply voting on a government that only caters to one issue, right? All of the other issues that they are not catering to, that is not going to be heard of from that government, which is why we tell you that is why it is so harmful, because you are only voting based on that one single issue that government is catering to. Secondly, they tell you that with this like single issue voting, it will make sure that the government like there provides an accountability for like these governments, because like they will actually like commit to their policy. But realize that in static, like even if single issue voting does not exist, that already exists anyway, because there is a check and balance from their citizens, right? If the government does not actually do what they say what they say they're going to do, then obviously the public will rage on about it. So we don't think that is actually relevant to this debate. Now, let's move on. Now let's move on to what my previous speaker has said. We've told you that the impact on society itself is bad, right? Even if these people, right, even if these people who are single issue voting for a specific government and that government does not get elected, we still think that the normalization and the rise of single issue voting is bad, because of the mere fact that when you are telling these people that you as a person, right, you as a person who has been given the right to make such an important decision, right, an important decision that not only affects yourself but affects millions of people, but then you're saying that it is simply okay for you to go and only choose the person that only caters to you at the risk of harming other people. We tell you that is going to create a very selfish society that only cares and caters to themselves, a society that is not mindful and how you actually create a community in between that country, right? We tell you that when every single person in that country, right, in a situation where this single issue voting is so normalized, right, where in that specific country every single person only votes for what they think caters to them best, on their selfish needs as to what they think the government will benefit only them in the best way. We think that is going to create an unstable society, because it is a society that does not actually care about the people around them. It is not even a community at the end of the day. How are you going to create a progressive country if at the end of the day all your citizens are not even united? But POI from KYSC.
Can you tell me exactly why do voters want to vote in the first place?
Okay, we tell you that voters want to vote in the first place because they want to choose the best governing country for their country, right? And we tell you that at the end of the day, we want to actually exist informed voters who do not just care about themselves. We tell you that, of course, people vote based on like their own needs, but we tell you that the single issue voting, right, the issue in this motion is single issue voting, meaning to say that they only want their government to cater to that one specific problem that they have. We tell you that becomes selfish and harmful when in that point of time that government only caters to that one problem, but at the same time they bring more harm and make more people oppressed. We tell you that is the point in time in which this becomes an issue. It is not the fact that people vote based on their needs, because that is obviously why people vote in the first place. But we tell you that single issue voting, right, when you're only focusing on one singular issue that you are facing, and not the issue that the majority, like for example, not the issue that majority of people in that country are facing. We tell you that is the point in time in which you are directly harming so millions of people in your own country. And we tell you that as a country, right, as a community that is literally living in the same in that same place with millions of other people, we tell you that it is so important for you to be able to actually care about the other people in your country. We tell you that it is important for you to be mindful of what you do, because at the end of the day, you are given this right to choose the governing to choose the government of your nation, something that is so important and that will impact millions of people in terms of economy, healthcare, education, and all that. So we think that that is why you as a person should be mindful, and we think that the impact of this single issue voting does not the harms of this single issue voting does not outweigh the benefits.
Thank you to the speaker for that speech. Now to complete the opening half, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Okay, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a hero. I just want to focus on myself. Even if it means that it creates an unbalanced society, at the end of the day, I'll still be happy if the government still respects my decision and still respects to the fact that I'm saying that I'm being marginalized, and to the fact that this issue has to be more prevalent. If that issue gets solved at the end of the day, even at the cost as like harming a few other people, then I say that I'll still be okay at the end of the day, knowing that my rights are served, right, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's move on to my rebuttals. First of all, they said that, government are committing to their policies nowadays because there's check and balances such as backlash from the citizens. First of all, we said that that's not necessarily true. Why? Because when Anwar Ibrahim came up here and told us he wanted to be our president, he brought up 3 things: grades, education, and helping marginalized society, right? Now, what did he actually achieve at the end of the day, like, ladies and gentlemen? He brought up he did give more rights to marginalized society, but at the end of the day, our education is dropping day by day. PT3 got cancelled because of the fact that Anwar Ibrahim came into the landscape of education and he just does not give he just doesn't care about other aspects, right? Which is why we say that this politician makes empty promises all the time, which is why we say that it's okay for them to only focus in one aspect, because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, that's the only thing that they're going to achieve by the end of their governing landscape or governing time, right? Time of period, right, ladies and gentlemen? Which is why we say that it's better for them to be transparent with the people and say that, we're going to solve this issue. This is the issue that's more prevalent and that's in the most interest of the people, which is why we say that we'll prioritize this issue over any other issues because of the fact that that's the demand of the people right now, right, ladies and gentlemen. When we don't really get why SSP here want to really defend our government when the fact is we haven't been a developed country for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. Even with their policy, if they're trying to defend the status quo where people have to focus on all of the things at once, right? Our country hasn't been growing because of the fact that we haven't even been able to get our opinion, our interests outright to the public and saying that this is, I think, the most important issue that is valuable to me. Therefore, you should listen to me as the government because you want to get my vote at the end of the day, right, ladies and gentlemen? Now, they say that normalization of shadowing other needs of other citizens. First of all, if every other citizens were to get single issue voting, right, ladies and gentlemen, if they don't care about anything else, then if the interests of the people, what they're trying to go to get out into the public are the interests of the public, meaning that is the demand. So for example, you're from a marginalized society and you think that throughout BN or UMNO's reigning period, they haven't been getting enough attention because BN has only been giving this peribumi hak to only Malays, right? Which is why we say that it's okay to you to prioritize yourself because sometimes you are not being prioritized by the government, ladies and gentlemen. Because of that fact, you need to take a stand and you need to take the ideology that I need to prioritize myself because of the fact that government is not prioritizing me, right? At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Which is why I'll move on to my arguments, right? Now, first argument, it increases participation in votes. Why do we say that this happens? The ground has already been explained by my leader of opposition, so I don't see the need to explain it again. Now, what is the necessary impact of getting people's opinion and voice out more? We see that the fact is people hasn't been voting because of the fact that they're scared they got blood on their hands when the government doesn't actually solve the thing that they want to solve. When they say that they want to represent people, they say that they want to solve this issue, but they don't do it. Most of the people thinks it's hard to research about the facts of this government in order to vote for them. And we say that how do we change this is by saying that we're only going to prioritize your main needs. You can vote based on your main needs because of the fact that it's justified, right, ladies and gentlemen? Because we're saying that what does this looks like, right? This looks like minorities focusing on voting on PAR when BN was in power because they only focus on giving Malay privileges, like what I said, right? At least we get this person who has been marginalized to engage on the greater concern that they want to show out in the public in order for the political party to actually improve on themselves and actually do their promises rather than just leaving it empty for the rest of the day, right? Now, why is it justified for the voters to do so even at the cost at others, right? We say that it's impossible for the majority to be marginalized even further, right, ladies and gentlemen, which is why we say that at the end of the day, even if this marginalized society were able to get their good interests and it causes the majority to lose some kind of their privileges, we say that we're fine with this because only then are we able to achieve equality at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. If you're going to focus on every aspect of a government, that only the majority is going to be winning at the end of the day. Only the majority is going to get the attention from the political party because that's the only thing that they need to win. They need to focus on in order to win this majority's votes, right? Which is why we say that in order for you to achieve equality in the first place is to be able to prioritize your main needs rather than saying, I need to focus on other people's interests. Because no, I don't really need to. Because in order for me to live my life, I don't need to think about the harm that I've been doing to you because you did the same thing to me, right? Malay votes for BN all the time, and it causes Chinese and Indian to suffer some kind of privileges, and they've been doing this for 75 years, ladies and gentlemen. Now that we have a chance to turn it back, and we say that we want this marginalized society to be able to turn that vote and to be able to get the government's attention on them. Now that we have this chance, we ask you to take an action and actually go for the right. Okay, sure.
So you do think that it's okay that other communities suffer and are more oppressed because of that one single vote that you make?
First of all, you're not even explaining to me how this suddenly marginalized society will be oppressed, right? I don't think a government is going to be stupid enough to actually propose child marriage in order to better their education system. I don't think they're going to be doing some stupid ass proposal just because of the fact that they're trying to focus on one thing, which is why we say that at the end of the day, what you're proposing to us sounds illogical because they're trying to cater towards because a government's purpose is trying to get the majority's vote, right? Now we're saying to you that the greater concerns can be actually followed up by people's opinion, which is why I think your characterization or your whatever you give in your argument doesn't really stand out to us because you don't even explain to us how these people are suddenly prioritizing yourself is going to be harming 100 million people others, right? That I don't really understand because you need to explain on that more, which is why I asked closing government to elaborate that on that more. Yeah. Okay, now okay. Now why is it why is the impact of their opinion being followed out, right? We say that the most concerning concerns would be valued at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. For example, if you're a youth, right? Your youth and your concern because the employment rate is going down and Anwar is not doing anything, then the next election, you're able to say that, if you don't value the youth and you don't value the amount of unemployment rate that we have, and if you're not going to solve it, I'm not going to vote for you at the end of the day, which is actually incentivizes politicians to actually get a better grip on their life and actually do their promises at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Now with that, I would like to end my speech.
Sure. Just for the sake of formalities and considering this is a high school tournament, I recommend that you guys don't swear or try to minimize swearing or apologize for swearing perhaps. But I don't mind. It's just this is recorded and for the sake of formalities that has to be said. Now to begin the closing house, member of government, here.
I would time myself for a second. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. So as the first speaker of the closing government, I would like to state to you and strengthen to you what the government's case have already brought and why we actually stand out more than the opposition side. So first, let me actually answer their question. Is it why a single issue voting actually impact many? So I will give you a brief example of Kamala Harris. Okay, so Kamala Harris, she's proposing the issue that she will solve and she will give the rights to have an abortion. So all of these women in the country will actually focus on Kamala Harris only because she actually want to give them the right of abortion. So when all of these women actually focus on this Kamala Harris only issue, that one issue, they don't actually see what is the flaws of Kamala Harris actually. So what Kamala Harris flaws is she doesn't know much about the literacy of economy, and second, she doesn't know how to campaign that well, and last but not least, she is actually not that is not that formidable of education. So when this happened, the voters or even though the citizens could actually be impacted by the voters' influence as well. And when these voters already influence all the citizens, this could actually bring the citizens to actually vote for Kamala Harris without knowing that this Kamala Harris, if they vote her, they will actually get fall down of their economy. They will eventually have a low quality of their children's education, and also they will actually get a more of a free sexually activity of a society because Kamala Harris is giving you the right of abortion. So what happened here is that the trend of single issue voting in the social media as well is influencing the voters to vote Kamala Harris on this one issue only, and this eventually overshadow all of the citizens' eyes about the flaws of Kamala Harris and the flaws of solving this issue itself. Okay, so what we want to propose here is that multiple issue voting and of consideration of multiple issue is actually more beneficial. So that's why we actually want to regret the rise of single issue voting, because we believe that this brings harm a lot, and thus we want to encourage the citizens or the voters itself to have a
Right.
multiple issue consideration of the voting. So when they have a multiple issue consideration of these voters, first they would think about the pros and cons of each politicians and their ways of solving issue, right? So when this happen, they will actually have a good judgment, and they will eventually get a world where they want what they have, and also even if the issue that they want actually brings is actually even if the issue that they want is in the politician itself, and also they have the flaws, they could actually see this what this politician could also bring to them. They could bring the flaws, and they could also bring the issue that they want to, that they can also solve the issue that they want to solve. All right. So when this multiple issue consideration is being normalized by the people, they will make a good judgment, right? So this is actually for the greater good of the country. So what is the impact is that when there are only when the citizen is normalizing this single issue voting, first of all, they will have a clouded judgment. So they will only pursue this one voting based on their personal interest. So their personal interest is not actually what the majority wants. And why are we actually focusing on the majority is because majority is having the most impact in that country, and also this majority is also the one who drive that country. So when this is only pursued by their own personal interest and not what the country needs, thus this politician will stray away from the needs of their own actually country, and they will eventually not focusing on the more important issues such as the economy that I've said before, and also the education, which leads to a better country. Okay, and the next one, I would like to add for the stakeholder of the politician. So when this happened, this normalization and the trend of single issue voting, right? So the manipulation of political campaigning will happen. Why? Because the politicians will actually target demography of people such as the school, the job, the wages, and also the abortion law. So this they will ramp up the campaign for that issue, and this will boost the popularity of not the good politicians that we are searching for, because these politicians have already been blinded as well by the influence of this single issue voting influence. All right, so this is what we would like to say, and also the next one is when they said that the opposition side, they talk about how when this single issue voting is there, they will be more aware of that issue, and also they will become non-do policy and got backlash and so on. So it actually, in our world, we also have that. We're just regretting them to actually judging based on that one issue only, and thus
Why?
they are saying also, I'm sorry, I'm not taking POI anymore. And also, they are talking about how our world doesn't empower the voters because we don't actually prioritize their issues. And actually, in our world, we also empowers them, because why? We actually take in consideration of their voting, and also we actually give them the more important needs of them, instead of the things that will eventually harm them, such as the abortion law itself. This abortion issue actually brings harm also to the society's mindset, and also but the society have an influence that they need it, but actually the good politician, they know that this is bad, and they don't want this. So what we're empowering them is the right one that they don't see. That's why we actually want them. That's why our work is better than them. And next one is how um if they are this trend of single issue votings, the politician will actually know which issue they need to solve first. All right. So I understand that there are many issues in this world, and the politician might not see some of the minor issue, right? But actually, by focusing on the major issue, this could eventually help the citizens more, rather than we are focusing on the minor issue, which only help almost like it's not even 50% of their life. So that's why we actually in the logical and in the logic of one politician, right? We always think that we have to actually solve the major problem first, because why there will be more impact to the society and more impact to our country and the world itself. And that is the end of my speech. Thank you.
Thank you to that speaker for that speech. To begin the closing opposition case, member of opposition. You're here.
Okay, I prefer to take my POIs verbally. So if you have any POIs, please, I prefer to take my POIs verbally. So if you have any POIs, just say it out loud, because if you say it in the chat, I'm afraid I wouldn't realize. Okay, now that that's out of the way, just give me a moment. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's funny how this whole entire debate has been a harms versus benefits case, right? But nobody has ever really clarified why single issue voting happens in the first place, and this is what closing opposition is going to tell you. Okay, so we commend our opening for giving a spectacular case, right? And we commend the arguments, everything. But we're going to prove to you why side closing opposition takes this debate, right? Okay, so I'll be doing my speech today. I'll be giving a summary of what has happened in the opening half. I'll be giving my rebuttals, and I'll be giving my case setup, and I'll be moving on to my arguments. Okay, to start with the summary, right? What I've heard from the opening half is that it's mostly a harms versus benefits case, where government wants to argue about the harms of single issue voting, saying that we're creating selfish citizens and we're creating citizens who only have like a one-track mind. Whereas side opposition is saying that, oh no, there are actually benefits of like single issue voting, right? And although we understand, side closing opposition understands the direction this debate is going, we think that it can be taken we think that it can be taken farther than this, right? And I'm going to prove this to you in my arguments later on. Okay, so now to move on to my rebuttals, right? So my first rebuttal to side government, right? They said that it will make society that is selfish, because if people only want to vote for one single issue and they want to like ignore the other things that these political parties might campaign for in the first place, right? And they said that parties advocating for abortion might also allow child marriage, right? But I don't see how this is logical, because parties that are liberal and advocate for abortion obviously wouldn't allow conservative policies. That's a contradiction on their side, right? And we think that that is a slip up on their side, right? And they said that single voting is bad because it will not cater to all, right? But understand that even in today's current society, where people choose to vote for political parties based off of their campaigns and their ideologies as a whole, they still cannot cater to all society when they're elected, right? They can only cater to the majority that votes for them. Understand that voters vote because they want to find the best government that will govern their country, right? Okay, so now my rebuttals are done. I'll be talking about my case setup now. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you why single issue voting happens in the first place, right? Since that's something that all three teams couldn't explain at all, right? They never touched on that, right? But understand that single issue voting happens in the first place in today's world is because of the fact that, okay, take the worst case, right? Take the worst case. When Trump versus Biden were competing for the presidential elections, right? Nobody wanted to vote for either because of the fact that both parties had such harmful ideologies and nobody really supported both parties' campaigns, right? Okay, so as a result of the fact that nobody wanted to vote for either parties, we say that people not feeling incentivized to vote for either party is going to lead to people choosing not to vote at all or choosing to opt into a third party vote, right? And we say that it's even more harmful because of the fact that when people choose to opt into third party voting, you're actually destroying democracy and you're basically undoing all the progress in your country, right? Okay, I'm going to explain this in my arguments further, right? Okay, so my first argument is the principle of participation, right? So understand that democracy is based off the principle of participation, where you get to say and you get to do and you get to be empowered as a citizen, right? So democracy is essentially where you get a say in the government that is governing your country, right? Okay, so with single issue voting, this is going to increase the participation of the citizens in the country because understand that the issue in today's status quo is that citizens don't feel incentivized to vote for either political party because of the fact that both political parties don't have their campaigns or their ideologies don't align with the citizens' personal views. A good example of this is, for example, if the elections are between Barisan Nasional and Pakatan Harapan, and I, as a voter, personally don't believe in the ideologies or campaigns that are being pushed by both parties. Right? But suddenly Pakatan Harapan comes up and talks about issues in education, and they say that they want to push for solving these issues in education. Right? I, as a student, as a voter, right, if I feel that I believe in what Pakatan Harapan is trying to change in terms of the education aspect, then I don't think it's selfish for me to say that I want to vote for Pakatan Harapan because as long as I vote, as long as my vote is counted, it's not a third party vote, then we think that it's okay, right? So if politicians choose to focus on a single issue and campaign for it because they know it will get them votes, we say that this is okay because right now, more people are paying attention to certain issues over others. But the harm on government is people can opt into not voting at all if they don't support any one politician, right? As I mentioned earlier. So if a politician chooses to campaign or a party chooses to campaign for a certain issue because they know it will get more people to vote, we say that it's okay because at least people are participating in democracy, right? I understand that when you destroy the participation, you are destroying democracy. Participation is essentially the principle on which democracy is based on because democracy is where everyone gets a right to speak out and everyone gets a right to be a part of the decision-making process, right? And why this is important and relevant, right, is because without single issue voting, right, citizens don't feel incentivized to vote when the ideologies of both parties don't align with their personal views. As I mentioned earlier, if Barisan Nasional and Pakatan Harapan are having an election and I don't believe in their ideologies and I don't believe in both of their campaigns, I wouldn't feel incentivized to vote, right? But with
Yo,
single
I.
issue voting, right? No, thank you. But with this single issue voting, if they at least have one issue that citizens personally feel like they want to fight for that issue, they want to change that issue, at least it is bridging this clash between ideologies, right? We consider the fact that it's not a complete solution, right? But we say that no political party will ever be able to campaign to the ideologies of all citizens in one society. So we say that at least this is a way of sort of bridging that ideology clash, right? And my second argument, as I said earlier, links to my first argument. We want to advocate for the protection of democracy. On side closing opposition, we're trying to say that it's fine if people vote on a single issue basis because, as I said earlier, we want to protect democracy. Understand the issue to the status quo is that people would choose not to vote at all, right? And side government wants to argue that there would be no progress in the country if politicians focus on a single issue, right? But we say that destruction of democracy is the ultimate harm they want to avoid because without democracy, you are heading down a path that will lead to tyranny or a path where citizens don't get a say in voting at all. It's more harmful on side government because they're running the risk of people not voting at all. Right? I understand that people not voting at all leads to a complete shutdown of the government where political parties could assume control of this government role, without support from the citizens. Right. My third argument would be the principle of right to choice. Government says it's not as important as compared to the impacts that single issue voting brings. So I'm going to explain to you what this is harmful, right? We say it's fine if people choose to vote on a single issue basis because everyone has a right to choice. Everyone has a right to choose what they believe in and what they want to vote for, right? When you take away that right to choice, ultimately becomes coercion, right? And ultimately, democracy does also boil down to choice because everyone has the right to choose. Every citizen that is participating in society has the right to choose their leader, has the right to choose what they want to believe in, right? And this relates to an argument on the protection of democracy because if the option to vote for a single issue is removed, there's a chance that nobody will want to vote anymore, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go for a side that actually understands the concept of single issue voting and you want to go for a side that actually wants to protect democracy and society as a whole, vote for side closing opposition. Thank you.
Thank you to the speaker for that speech. Now to wrap up the government bench, you're here.
So before that, I think
Sorry, I just want to set my timer. Okay. Oh, Okay, so I'll be beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, very good evening. I bid to all the members of the floor. So, let's jump right into it. So, one of the main things that uh don't can't that the other side can't seem to comprehend is that if they only focus on this single issue, then the majority that okay, so if they only focus on these single issues, other issues won't be solved. So, uh, okay, so when they only focus when politicians they campaign on this single issue, then this issue they tend to focus on issues that are flashy in nature. So so for example, one thing that is heavily debated on is the issue of abortion rights, the issue of um uh, same-sex marriage. That's a very controversial issue that has many sides. So when this one politician takes one side of this issue and the other takes one side of this issue, they're only seeing the issue of, oh, this person legalizes same-sex marriage, therefore I will go to her. So actually, this is very harmful because when this flashy issue is coming up to the stand, it overshadows these little issues that they don't deem as important because they don't they don't have the knowledge of why it's important. For example, if um I can imagine that there are many young liberal voters out there who want specific rights, but on social media they see that these politicians they go with what they want, so they're like, oh, okay, I'll go with them. But because since they're young and they're only voting for the first time, they don't actually have the knowledge of why, let's say, economy is important to the country, why all these other issues are important to the country. They don't take in perspective the other issues that are arising here. Okay, another thing they said is that when single issue voters, they um only vote for one issue, the politician will help them solve that single issue, and they'll be satisfied. But the thing is, what they of their perspective or what they think is good for them and what is actually good for them is not the same. Is not the same. Okay, so let's see. Um, they see the visible changes. They see that, oh, what I wanted, what I voted for them for has been fulfilled. I'm satisfied with them. But in several indirect ways, they are affected badly. So a politician, this okay, let's say there's one politician, they allow same-sex marriage. So I'm so uh okay, it's just to say I'm happy, but then they don't see the harms that the education system gets less funding, there are less subsidies for them. There are worse financial managing. So all these little unnoticeable kinks in the administration of the person they chose, they accumulate into this lessened quality of life for me, which would have been better if I had voted for another choice in the first place. But I don't see this because I'm already satisfied with this single flashy issue that has been solved by the politician. So another thing is this question has been coming up a lot. Why does single issue voting happened in the first place. So actually, this single issue voting happens because people they are too lazy to research for their candidates. Okay, we talk about how uh, this will single issue voting will will increase will actually increase participation, and therefore democracy can be upheld. And we apa tu? we admit, we know this is correct, but we are only just regretting that people are only focusing on single issues, because this motion is this house regrets single issue. Okay, so another thing is that they said that in our world we can only cater to the majority and not to society. Well, of course you can't cater to everyone. There are always going to be multiple sides of people who agree and disagree with what you want. But at least in our world, we actually benefit the most people, while your side is only benefiting these little communities that only make up a very small percentage of the demographic. So, um, so I would like to add up on on the points that my my teammate gave. So, um, okay. So about the manipulation of political campaigning. So as I have said, that the media coverage of politicians campaigning on these flashy issues will be much higher, and this will allow them to actually just take on these flashy issues, but they don't actually have the intention to solve it that much. They just say, so I will give you a lot of subsidies. Okay. And then he gives them subsidies, but it's so small that it's obvious that the only reason he even gave those small subsidies is to just fill in the minimum requirement of what he said he'd do during the campaigning. So uh I believe we have to end my speech, I would like to compare both of our worlds. So in our world, we are actually focusing on the majority, on the greater good of the country, whereas this other worlds, they are only focusing on these small communities who only look out for their own interests. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you to the speaker for that speech. Now to end the debate, opposition whip. Here.
I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Hold on, yeah, I'll set up my timer. All right. If at any point I do cut off, please do tell me, because in the other debate just now we had that tendency to cut off. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's kind of funny how all teams in this room try to give a harmless benefits of like letting these people vote based on their singular issues or not become selfish, ladies and gentlemen. But then we on CO come up here and tell you the real main cause why people want to vote in the first place, why our side is justified because of that, and why exactly when you don't let people vote based on their singular issues, they're not going to vote at all, and that crumbles democracy as a whole, right, ladies and gentlemen? My speech is simple. One, I'll be like mentioning some rebuttals towards the government side. 2, I'll be going on to a bit of weighing. 3, I'll be going on to the main clash. And then 4, I'll be mentioning our side's best versus worst case. And 5, I'll be mentioning why do we win on closing opposition. So let's go on to our rebuttals firstly. First rebuttal, they come up here and say that freedom of choice isn't worth the impacts that will happen if single voting is allowed, implying that when we allow single issue voting, people are going to become selfish, people will only vote based on what they want, right? I'll be explaining why this is completely untrue in my clashes and weighing. Secondly, CG comes up here and tells me that quality of life will like destroyed if people are selfish and only vote for what they want. One, they say that when people are voting based on single issues, the quality of life for certain people become bad because the majority is voting for whatever is good for them. Two, I'll explain why this is also untrue in my weighing. And then three, whenever I ask OG why do people originally want to vote, they only give me a one-liner on like people want to vote, like people want to go out and vote to elect the best government, but they don't really paint me a picture. How long do these people wait in line to vote for? What the situations of voting conditions look like for certain people around the world? And then why exactly do people want to go through all that just to get to cast their vote and elect for a democratic party? But before I move on to any arguments or my clashes, any POIs? 3, 2, 1. No. Let's move on to a bit of weighing, right? So I'm going to be weighing on the main clash, which is destruction of democracy versus a selfish society. Because I don't think I can really accredit CG for whatever they said, because all they came up was whatever OG has ever mentioned, right? But then what did OG say? Opening government said that allowing single issue voting will create a society that's only voting for parties that will solve their problems. So i.e., if I'm a woman that's pregnant by rape and I need abortion, I will only vote for a party that's catering to abortion, not looking at any of the other track records or offer or manifestos, right? Two, they say that the impacts this brings that the elected government will not be able to cater to everybody, right? And because that's essentially what they call as being selfish. But then how did we respond to this? We said this will cause the destruction of democracy, because when you do not allow people to vote based on certain single issues, fine, it may be untruthful, fine, it may be how do I say that, untruthful in a general sense. But then we say if it's fine if it's untruthful as long as these people go out and vote, ladies and gentlemen. Because why? It is number one, their responsibility to go out as a voter. Two, if you do not allow them to vote on single issues, there won't be any democratic scene in the country at all, ladies and gentlemen. Because you're essentially saying, okay, if you cannot vote on this and you want to vote on what the general public perceives the
POI.
country later, then you're essentially saying you don't have to go vote at all, as a harm that opening government will have to tackle, but they never tackle in the first place, right? So we say the only reason people vote in status quo is to fulfill their responsibility as a voter, to vote for a party that will actually be able to solve their problems. But we already told you how exactly democracy works in countries. Voters will only vote because they want to find the best party. But what have we said regarding to this? We say that the reason people go out for hours queuing in lines to vote is because, one, they want a better society, or two, because parties are catering towards these voters' best interests. We tell you that without the ability to vote based on single issues that are catering personally towards a person, people are just more likely not going to vote at all. But before I go on, POI. 3, 2, 1. So let's move on to the main clash of today's debate. Why do voters want to vote in the first place? Which is something that needed to be cleared up starting from OO, but OO didn't really do it, so I'm going to be doing it in CO. Mind you, it might be a bit late. So one, OG and CG comes up here and only gives a one-liner on why do voters want to vote anyway, which is kind of unprecedented because their whole case is contingent on do voters want to vote or not. Second, they say that voters only go out to vote because they want to find the best government that can benefit their countries. Again, a one-liner. Three, understand that we already told you why voters want to vote in the first place, because it's to choose what's the best interest for them or their community personally, ladies and gentlemen. I will not go out to vote if nobody is going to solve my abortion problem, ladies and gentlemen. We tell you exactly how the government looks today, whether certain parties not being able to cater to any members of society and cannot attract interest in the whole community. Ira already told you exactly what the government looks like today, where certain parties or certain politicians are just not aligned with what the society wants in the first place. Therefore, people are just rather not going to vote and want a third option instead of the first two, which is Joe Biden and Trump, ladies and gentlemen. The problem is government assumes that when people vote based on single issues, the world suddenly becomes selfish. One, understand that certain parties that advocate for single issues like Barisan Nasional or UMNO will only be elected as the majority government if the majority votes for them. Understand, it doesn't matter if a person votes based on their singular interest, doesn't matter if a voter votes based on the singular issues. The only way a party will actually become a majority government is if the majority votes for them. And we say that is part of democracy. We cannot disturb that. It's fine if whatever harms brings them, because that's what the society perceives the country should be like and how the country should function in the first place. Two, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you cast a singular vote on your end, that other people be harmed. Because it will only work like that if only the majority deems that to be justifiable. But before 6, I'll set another POI. 3, 2, 1. Seriously, no POI? Oh, okay, that means everyone agrees with me, I guess. So then, why do we win on closing opposition essentially? Because we already told you the rest of single issue voting allows for the protection of democracy in the first place, allows for the protection of voters' rights, and allows people to actually be freely going out and vote based on what they personally want, ladies and gentlemen. But let's move on to our best versus worst case. So on closing opposition's worst, people will be selfish and vote for whatever they want, and this will become the majority as other people see fit in like the elected government, right? But we already told you how this is fine because at least it protects the democratic system we already have in place. But what does opening government have at their best? All parts of society will be catered to as people will not vote based on what they want, but what the country wants as a whole. We say our worst is better than their best in all terms because at least in our world, people are actually willing to vote based on the democratic right to vote and their own choice of voting. They only tell us that a selfish society will occur, quality of life will deteriorate in CG, but understand, we already told you also why these political parties also have the obligation of their moral standard to be upheld. Ira mentioned this. Ira specifically said that once these parties are elected majority or elected into parliament at all, they will be held up to a high moral standard that they will have to adhere to, making sure that, okay, fine, if at least one person's quality of life gets deteriorated, at least it's not that bad, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, this doesn't affect the quality of life for the whole majority or the whole minority as a whole. But then why do we want a closing opposition is simple for 4 reasons. We told you exactly why the protection of democracy is more important than a selfish society at all if they won't want to vote at all. Two, we told you exactly why opening government isn't relevant anymore in both speeches. Me and Iras, we told you why closing government's points doesn't matter because I cannot accredit it because they said whatever OG said. And then we win over OO because we provided whatever expenses they failed to clear up. We provided the main reason why people want to vote. And we provided all the expenses that they failed to mention. So if you want a side which actually protects voters' rights, go for side closing opposition. Thank you.
Thank you to that speaker for that speech. And this, just as a reminder, it's a final round. Therefore, I wouldn't be giving OA, but you guys will be able to know your rankings later on around 5 o'clock, I believe. But I'm not sure whether that's when break announcements are. They will clarify it slightly later. If you guys want personal feedback, you can contact me later on WhatsApp. I'll put my phone number in the chat. But aside from that, great job, guys. I think this was a relatively high quality debate.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, there's my number. You can message me later if you guys want feedback.